How do you listen? I mean, how do you actually listen? It's one of the hardest things to train is listening, which seems crazy. Are you listening to me now? How do you know you're listening to me now? Well, we're going to talk about something called active listening in this video. And we're going to deconstruct the skills that you use if you are listening properly. Before we start, I want to show you a short clip. During this clip, I want you to try and listen to what the two people in the clip are saying. And just think about what's going through your mind while you're listening.
So I went to York on the watch today.
Oh?
Yeah, that doll's a rainbow on her face. Can't believe that Maury album, John. Did you flat by the one black call?
Yeah, I come by the next ring. I played that Privatium by the wrong front line today.
Oh, the raising man with an ash marine? Don't for me you agreed that Trajan.
No, her station is trapped. I mean, why the crest soldier for the Magdalene nation? It's further grad to my Joseph.
Joseph for the Magalon?
Magalon my shit.
I can imagine that was very, very hard to listen to. In fact, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, they're not speaking English. It's difficult to listen to something when they're not speaking English. They're not just not speaking English, they're not speaking any language. They're speaking something called fake English. Now, think about as you were trying to listen to that, what was going through your mind. You probably switched off, you're probably thinking of something else, you probably gave up. This is because you can't understand what the other person's saying. Now, understanding is the first pillar of active listening. We have to understand what the other person's saying. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, someone's not going to be speaking fake English to me, so it's never going to be that difficult. But it will be in a way. Now, listen to what I'm about to say now. The most important thing for our organisation this year is product harmony. If we can achieve that, we can grow our business by 25%. That 25% is going to assure our stakeholders and mean that we can get further investment in the market. All makes sense to you, right? All words you've heard before. But let me ask you a question. What does product harmony mean? Now, I can tell the answer to that. It means nothing because I've just made it up. But you're probably sitting there listening to that going, okay, the most important thing is product harmony. Because you don't understand, it puts you in a position where everything that I say afterwards is irrelevant because that's the most important thing to my organisation. Now, if you're listening to someone and you don't understand what they're saying, you have the right to ask them to clarify. So the first question I would have asked there was, I just want to go back to something you said earlier. You mentioned that product harmony is the most important thing for your organisation. That obviously means very different things for different businesses. For you guys, what exactly does product harmony mean? And then you've got the clarity and then you understand. So the first part of active listening is understanding. The second part of active listening is actually remembering. Now, if you get the first part right and you understand everything that the customer or prospect is saying, it sets you up and puts you in a really good position to do that, to remember what the customer said. Why is it so important to remember? Well, when you're remembering, you're going to pick up on the information that you want to drill down to or you want to respond to and question next around. So it's really important that when you're going through that process, you're remembering the key parts of what the customer's saying so you can hone in on it and ask questions around it. We often have to use a tactic called branching questions. So the customer might say 2 or 3 things that are really interesting. We pick on the first one and we follow the funnel all the way down. And then we go, I also want to go back to something else you said. You also mentioned this. I want to learn a bit more about that. Follow the funnel all the way down and then go back up and say, hey, and lastly, you mentioned this. I want to go into a bit more of an understanding around that and then follow the branch all the way down. Now, branching question is really important because it gives you the ability to actually discuss and question around everything that's important and not to leave any stone unturned when it comes to your questioning. But if you don't remember what the customer said, it puts you in a really, really bad position to do that. Now, what a lot of people do and where they go wrong is that they're not actually listening to the customer. They're thinking about their next question. And this is what you often see when people first start in a sales role is that they think that the questioning is a means to an end. So they just go through a set of questions that they always ask and all they're thinking about is the next question. But actually the listening part of it is the most critical piece. So just to recap, understand what the customer's saying. If you can understand it, you're likely to remember the key information that you're going to drill down on. And then lastly, we go into responding. Responding does exactly what it says on the tin. This is the question or the choice of question that we use having actively listened to the client. So if we've understood what they've said, we've remembered the critical and pertinent pieces of information, the way we respond is really important. Now, I'm not going to go into a big thing about questions, but we know questions are typically put into 2 areas, open questions and closed questions. More often than not, when you're going through a discovery stage or a questioning stage, You want to be using open questions because they give us three really critical things. Number one, they get information from the client, which is great because if we get that information, we can sell against that information. Number two, we get the client thinking. So we get them to think about things in a different way or think about stuff that they've not thought about before. And lastly, it's one of the most important and critical ways of actually building rapport is by asking questions and listening to the customer. Now, to recap on active listening, the three things you're looking for is understanding, remember, and respond. Now, I'll set you a challenge. Next time that you're speaking to a customer, I don't want you to listen to them, which sounds counterintuitive. I want you to just try and understand every single word that's leaving their mouth. If you understand all the critical information, you're likely to remember it. And if you're likely to remember it, you're likely to respond with the right type of question. So remember, park listening, start with understanding. I sincerely hope you got some value from this video. If you could subscribe, if you could like, if you could leave a comment, if you think it's worth any value. And also, if you're getting some use out of these videos, feel free to spread the love. Tell your friends about it, tell your colleagues about it, and anyone that you know that could get some value from these sales training videos, make sure you spread it onto them. Thanks guys, and as always, happy selling.